My name is Elly. I'm 28, a freelance graphic designer living in a quiet town in Oregon. For years, my life was simple, almost ordinary. Steady days filled with projects, coffee at the corner cafe, and evenings spent sketching in silence. Everything shifted because of my younger sister, Sophie. She's 26, a marketing professional with a sharp drive and an even sharper presence. Ambition practically radiates from her. And somehow, every milestone that belonged to me turned into her stage. This story is about the day she finally went too far. It was during her baby shower. A room decorated with pastel balloons and flowers, everyone gathered to celebrate her. I was pregnant too and quietly grateful for my own journey, holding the life that was growing inside me. But Sophie had always needed the spotlight. When the cake was brought out, she seized the knife meant for cutting it. Then in a blur, she swung it toward my belly, her voice rising into a shriek that silenced the room. "This is my day." Her words cut sharper than the blade in her hand. That moment happened a year ago, but its shadow hasn't left me. What followed would change everything, leaving scars no one could see. If you're still listening, we want to sincerely thank you for spending your time with us. Truly means a lot. We'd love to know, where in the world are you watching from? Drop your country in the comments and let's see how far this message has reached. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, I highly recommend doing it now so you won't miss any of our upcoming stories. These aren't just ordinary stories, they're filled with meaningful life lessons that can inspire, teach, and stay with you long after the video ends. Hit that subscribe button and join our growing community. From the time we were children, Sophie had always craved the center of attention. It wasn't just a passing phase or a playful quirk. It was a pattern, a need, something she carried like armor. I remember being 12, sitting at the piano for my very first recital, my hands trembling over the keys. I had practiced for months, every note etched into my fingers. It was supposed to be my moment. But before I could even begin, Sophie collapsed dramatically in the middle of the audience. She clutched her chest, eyes rolling back as if she'd fainted. Gasps filled the room. Parents rushed to help her, teachers panicked, and in the chaos, no one noticed me at the piano anymore. My big debut was swallowed whole by Sophie's theatrics. Years later, when prom night arrived, I thought maybe, just maybe, it would be different. I had been voted prom queen, an honor that made me glow with a mix of surprise and joy. But just as I was crowned, Sophie clutched her chest again, this time claiming she was having heart palpitations. The music stopped, students screamed, and the night spiraled into confusion. I stood there in my glittering dress, crown sliding on my head, forgotten. Sophie had stolen the show once more. It became a pattern I couldn't escape. At my graduation, she cried hysterically about feeling left behind. When I got engaged, she suddenly announced she was considering breaking up with her boyfriend, wailing that no one cared about her happiness. Every milestone that should have belonged to me was sabotaged by her illnesses, her outbursts, her uncanny ability to redirect all eyes onto herself. I grew weary, but I bit my tongue. I told myself it was just her personality, that she didn't know how else to exist. I tried to be the patient older sister. I tried to believe it was love, in her own twisted form. Then came the invitation. Sophie was expecting her first child with Jake, her husband, a 30-year-old construction engineer. The card was pastel pink and gold, with delicate lettering inviting me to her baby shower. She was about to step into a new chapter, one she could fully claim as her own. By then, I had just married David, my husband, a 29-year-old software engineer who loved me with a quiet steadiness Sophie had never known in her relationships. David supported me without question, encouraging my career, my art, my dreams. But when I opened that invitation, something inside me shifted. I felt a spark of rebellion. For once, I didn't want to stand in Sophie's shadow. I leaned toward David, my voice low, almost conspiratorial. "Let's try to have a baby," I whispered. His eyes widened. We had planned to wait a few years, to enjoy our marriage before stepping into parenthood. But I had calculated something different. If I conceived now, I could reveal my pregnancy during Sophie's shower. For the first time, I wanted her to taste what it felt like to be overshadowed. I wanted her to feel that sting. 3 months. That was the window I had. The first 2 pregnancy tests came back negative, and with each one I sank deeper into frustration. I remember lying in our darkened bedroom, blinds drawn, tears slipping down my face while David tried to soothe me. I felt trapped between desperation and anger. Desperation for a child and anger at Sophie for driving me to this place. On the third attempt, the doctor's silence during the ultrasound nearly broke me. She stared at the screen for what felt like an eternity, then finally turned and smiled. "Congratulations," she said softly. "It's twins." My laugh erupted before I could stop it. Loud, disbelieving, almost wild. Twins. Not only was I pregnant, but life had doubled the gift. For the first time, I felt like fate had chosen me, like the universe had handed me a secret weapon. From that day on, I became Sophie's most enthusiastic supporter. I threw myself into her baby shower planning with zeal. I designed a countdown for her Instagram, polished and eye-catching, one that kept her friends buzzing with excitement. I invited everyone I could think of, making sure the event would be unforgettable. Outwardly, I was the perfect sister, helpful, invested, loving. But inside, I was preparing for my grand reveal, the moment I would finally reclaim the spotlight Sophie had stolen from me for so long. My heart raced with the thought of it. Then one evening, as I was flipping through old journals, I made a discovery that hardened my resolve. There, scribbled in the pages of a diary I had kept at 15, was the name I had always dreamed of giving my daughter, Lily Rose. It was more than just a name to me. It was a symbol, a fragment of my girlhood, something sacred. And yet Sophie had taken it. She had rummaged through my belongings at some point, found it, and claimed it as her own. In her latest list of baby names, she had written it down as if it had always been hers. The betrayal felt like a knife to the chest. It wasn't enough for Sophie to steal moments. Now she was stealing dreams. That discovery didn't break me. It fueled me. My anger solidified into determination. The shower wasn't just a party anymore. It was the stage where I would finally, deliberately, and unapologetically outshine her. And for once, I wasn't going to apologize. The day of Sophie's shower arrived, and I dressed carefully, choosing a flowing dress that hid the small curve of my belly. My pregnancy was still fresh, only just beginning to show, but I wanted to keep the surprise hidden until the right moment. The house was buzzing when we arrived, filled with pastel decorations, glittering balloons, and the hum of voices that always gathered around Sophie. She stood in the center of it all, radiant, glowing as if the universe had chosen her alone for celebration. I watched quietly as she orchestrated the big reveal. Sophie, never one to do anything small, had prepared a dramatic confetti cannon. When the paper burst into the air, raining pink over the room, she screamed, "It's a girl!" The crowd erupted in applause, cell phones flashing, voices cheering. For a moment, she basked in the spotlight, arms lifted, eyes glittering with triumph. My hands tightened around the edge of my dress. This was the moment I had planned for. I imagined myself standing up, placing a hand on my belly, and announcing that David and I were expecting twins. The thought thrilled me, her face paling, the crowd gasping, the spotlight stolen. But as I shifted forward, a sudden wave of nausea swept over me. It came so fast I barely had time to breathe. My stomach clenched, and I stumbled away from the crowd, nearly knocking into a table. I made it to the bathroom, gripping the sink with white knuckles, retching into the porcelain as my body revolted. My reflection stared back at me, pale, sweaty, trembling. I whispered to myself, "Get it together, Elly. Not now." When the nausea passed, I pressed water to my lips, smoothed my hair, and forced myself to return to the party. The moment I stepped back into the living room, every eye turned toward me. Concern rippled through the guests. My mother, my cousins, even Jake's family stared with worry. Someone asked, "Are you okay?" And before I could stop myself, before I could swallow the truth, the words burst out. "Sorry, the twins just make me so exhausted. 6 weeks in, and I can't keep anything down." The silence was instant, like air sucked from a balloon. Then, in a voice sharp enough to cut glass, my Aunt Linda cried, "Twins!" Gasps followed, chairs scraped, and within seconds, the entire room surged toward me. Hands reached out, eager to touch my belly. Voices overlapped. "Twins! How exciting! Congratulations, Elly! That's amazing!" Their attention washed over me, a tide of curiosity and joy I hadn't expected so soon. Across the room, Sophie's face darkened. Her smile cracked, her lips trembled. I saw her chest rise and fall, breaths turning shallow, eyes wide with disbelief. For once she wasn't the star. The stage she had so carefully constructed was slipping from beneath her feet. I braced myself, expecting a scene, but nothing could have prepared me for what came next. Sophie lunged toward the cake table, seizing the silver knife meant for cutting her perfect pastel confection. She spun on her heels, her arm outstretched, the blade glinting under the chandelier. Her eyes locked on mine, wild, desperate. "This is my day," she screamed, voice shrill and raw. "You always steal everything from me." The room froze in horror. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. For a split second, I thought she might actually plunge the knife forward. But Jake rushed in, grabbing her wrist, wrestling the blade from her hand. Sophie's body collapsed, knees hitting the floor. Her sobs ripped through the silence, loud, messy mascara running in black rivers down her cheeks. My mother, Karen, pushed through the crowd. At 55, with her silver-streaked hair pulled tight and her stern banker's poise still intact, she bent to gather Sophie into her arms. Her eyes flicked up at me with a glare that cut deeper than any blade. To her, I wasn't the victim, I was the cause. Phones had already been raised, recording every second. I heard whispers, saw the glow of screens, knew this disaster was spilling online in real time. Then it happened. Karen rose, still clutching Sophie, and slapped me hard across the face. The crack echoed through the room. Fire burned my cheek. "You selfish girl," she spat. "You couldn't give Sophie one day? Just one day without stealing it from her." The crowd gasped again, but this time it wasn't in awe. My husband, David, stormed to my side, pulling me away. His arms circled protectively around my shoulders. "We're leaving," he snapped. But before he could get us to the door, Mia, my best friend since college, stepped between me and the crowd. Her voice rang out, steady and fierce. "If anyone touches Elly again, I'm calling the police." The room fractured then, some rushing to comfort Sophie, others murmuring about what they had just seen, still others clutching their phones as they uploaded clips. Jake managed to pry the knife away fully and set it on the counter. Sophie trembled, clutching her stomach, wailing about cramps. Within minutes, someone was calling an ambulance. She was taken away on a stretcher, claiming uterine contractions from stress. Even as the paramedics wheeled her out, she turned her head toward me, eyes blazing. Her words were venomous, spat across the space with enough force to sting. "If I lose this baby, don't think you'll keep yours either." The room erupted in horrified whispers. Her threat had been loud, clear, and captured by more than a dozen phones. David's jaw clenched. He pulled out his own phone and dialed immediately. "This is assault and a direct threat," he told the dispatcher. His voice was firm, almost trembling with restrained fury. "We need officers here." The police arrived within the hour, their presence cutting through the chaos. They took photos of my face, the angry red handprint still fresh. They listened as guests replayed Sophie's words from their recordings. Their advice was simple, almost chilling in its clarity. "You should file for a restraining order. For your safety and for your babies." As I sat in the corner, David's hand gripping mine, I realized the truth of it. This wasn't just sibling rivalry anymore. It was something darker, sharper. A battle that had crossed into dangerous ground. And the videos, the witnesses, the slap, the knife, all of it was evidence. For years, I had allowed Sophie's theatrics to rule my life. But now the whole world had seen it too. And for the first time, I wasn't the one forced into silence. The days after the baby shower felt like waking into a nightmare I couldn't escape. What had once been a private family disaster spilled into the public eye with ferocity. Clips of Sophie screaming, knife in hand, and my mother striking me went viral across TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. The hashtags were relentless. Hashtag sister drama, hashtag baby shower from hell, hashtag pregnant showdown. Strangers dissected our lives like gossip fodder. Some people sided with me, horrified at Sophie's behavior. Others mocked me, calling me attention-seeking. But the worst part was that Sophie thrived on the spectacle. Instead of retreating, she escalated. Every night, her car appeared at the end of our street. She parked just far enough away that she wasn't breaking the restraining order, but close enough that I could see her headlights through the blinds. Sometimes she would sit there for hours, unmoving, eyes locked on the silhouette of our house. I would pull the curtains tight, but the sense of being watched gnawed at me until I couldn't sleep. David, protective as ever, installed security cameras around the house, front door, backyard, even the nursery that we hadn't finished setting up. He wanted to catch every angle, every movement, to prove she was still tormenting us. Then there was my mother. She began showing up unannounced, pounding on the door with fists of fury, shouting accusations loud enough for the whole neighborhood to hear. "You ruined this family," she screamed one afternoon, her voice echoing down the street. "You destroyed your sister's life." Neighbors peeked through curtains and held up their phones, recording her outbursts like it was part of a reality show. I had once imagined pregnancy as a gentle, glowing time. Instead, I was trapped in a circus where my pain was public property. But the torment didn't stop at my front door. It followed me into the most vulnerable corners of my life. One morning, scrolling absent-mindedly through a local parenting group, my blood turned cold. There it was, my personal medical information, dates of my doctor's appointments, details from my ultrasounds, even notes about one twin's growth being slightly behind the other. I froze, breath caught in my throat. Who could have leaked something so private? The answer came swiftly. Investigators traced the breach back to Lisa, the wife of my cousin Tom. She worked in hospital records and had accessed my file more than 20 times without authorization. 20 times. Each time she had fed information to Sophie, who then weaponized it. Lisa had handed my sister the keys to my most intimate fears. When the hospital discovered the violation, they fired her immediately. Worse still, she now faced criminal charges under HIPAA law. The betrayal cracked through the family like a fault line. Tom, devastated, filed for divorce within weeks, telling everyone he couldn't bear to live with someone who had risked not only his cousin's safety, but the well-being of unborn children. His words carried the raw weight of finality. "She chose Sophie over our family. That's something I'll never forgive." As Lisa's downfall played out, Sophie found new battlegrounds. She plastered Facebook with posts painting herself as the victim. In one, she uploaded doctored photos that made it appear as though I was following her around town, lurking behind her car, standing outside her house. Her captions were venom disguised as vulnerability. "When your own sister won't stop stalking you, even during your pregnancy, pray for me and my baby." The post spread like wildfire. Strangers I had never met filled my inbox with hate. Threats poured in, messages telling me I deserved to be punished, that my children would never be safe, that I was a toxic mother before I'd even given birth. One post even revealed my home address, shared by someone who had pieced it together from the videos of my mother at my doorstep. Suddenly, the fear was no longer abstract. It was tangible, pressing, suffocating. The stress crushed me. Nights were sleepless, days were filled with a constant thrum of dread. I tried to hold myself together for the twins, but my body rebelled. One evening, sharp cramps doubled me over. David rushed me to the hospital, where the doctor's face turned grave. "You need complete rest," he said. "The stress is compromising one of the baby's growth. If you continue like this, you risk preterm labor." His words landed like blows. I was endangering my children simply by existing in this chaos. The guilt consumed me as I lay in the hospital bed, monitors strapped to my belly, listening to the fragile beats of two hearts that depended entirely on me. But then, in the midst of despair, a strange twist emerged. Jake, Sophie's husband, contacted the police himself. He had stumbled across one of her journals while she was in the shower. At first, he thought it was a diary of a new mother's anxieties. Instead, what he found was chilling. Meticulous entries documenting years of schemes to sabotage me. She had written about staging her fainting episode at my piano recital, about planning her heart scare at prom, about intentionally crying at my graduation and feigning heartbreak at my engagement. Every milestone she had plotted like a performance, ensuring the spotlight swung away from me and back to her. Jake turned the notebook over to authorities. His voice shook when he explained why. "She's not just hurting Elly anymore. She's dangerous. I'm filing for divorce. I can't let her raise Ava Lily alone. I don't trust her not to hurt our daughter." His words gutted me, because they confirmed what I had always suspected but never dared articulate. This wasn't just sibling rivalry. Sophie's obsession had become pathology. What followed was the darkest escalation yet. Sophie had been on medication for years, prescribed after her first breakdown in college, but she stopped taking it. She signed herself out of psychiatric care against medical advice. Within days, she disappeared. For 48 hours, no one knew where she was. Then the unthinkable happened. I was still recovering in the maternity ward, hooked to 4 fluids when alarms erupted. Voices shouted in the hallway. Security officers sprinted past my door. And then I heard her, Sophie, scream, raw and unhinged, slicing through the sterile air of the hospital. She stole my baby. She stole my life. Moments later, chaos burst into the ward. Sophie, hair disheveled, eyes bloodshot, clutched a knife she must have smuggled in. Her hospital gown flapped as she barreled past staff, searching door after door. I heard the clang of metal against walls as she shoved carts aside, her voice echoing. Where is she? Where's my sister? She can't take my child. My pulse thundered. David leapt to the door, locking it. His body braced against the frame. Nurses screamed. A mother down the hall clutched her newborn, sobbing. The air reeked of antiseptic and terror. Sophie's footsteps grew closer, each one a drumbeat of dread. She was coming for me, for the twins, for anyone in her way. And then, just as the knob rattled violently, security tackled her. Her shrieks turned feral, curses spilling as they wrestled the blade from her hand. I heard her spit words like acid. She doesn't deserve those babies. They should have been mine. I collapsed into tears, trembling so hard I thought I'd break apart. David pressed his forehead to mine, whispering, "It's over. You're safe now. She won't touch you again." But even as I clung to him, shaking, I knew this wasn't just an end. It was the unveiling of something we had ignored for too long. Sophie's envy wasn't just destructive, it was lethal. What had begun as petty attention-seeking had spiraled into obsession, and obsession into violence. Now the world had seen it too, carved into the internet forever, chronicled in police reports and court filings. And as I lay back against the stiff hospital pillow, one hand over the swell of my belly, I realized that my children would be born into a war I had never chosen, but one I would fight to the very end. 3 months after the baby shower, life rushed toward a moment I could never have predicted. At 35 weeks, I was rushed into an emergency C-section. The sterile lights of the hospital burned above me as the doctors worked quickly, their voices clipped but calm. I remember holding my breath when the first cry pierced the room. A fragile, high-pitched sound that sliced through the air. A boy. Ethan. Moments later, another cry followed, softer but steady. A girl. Emma. They were so tiny, their bodies wrapped in blankets that looked too big for them. But when I touched their fingers, curled like little shells, I felt a surprising strength. David held Ethan first, his broad shoulders trembling, tears streaming down his face. He kissed Emma's forehead and whispered something I couldn't hear. I had never seen him cry before, and in that moment I understood the depth of his love. Not just for me, but for the life we had created. Leaving the hospital was a blur. Nurses congratulated us, family members sent flowers, but I felt only exhaustion and awe. We packed up what little strength we had left and, almost immediately, made the decision to leave Oregon behind. It was not just geography we abandoned. It was a battlefield of memories. Seattle called to us, a place where we could rebuild. A place far enough away from the chaos to breathe again. Sophie had spiraled further after the baby shower. She had tried to harm herself, her grief and delusion swallowing her whole. The baby she carried never made it to the world. In a haze of paranoia, she lost the fragile hope of becoming a mother again. Doctors placed her in long-term psychiatric care, a place where the walls were locked and her mind could no longer spill into violence. I hated myself for the small relief I felt, but relief was there nonetheless. She could not reach us anymore. My mother, who had once sworn she would protect her children, was sentenced to probation after attacking me. The judge's words had been cold, but they cut deeply. "You are no longer a safe guardian of this family." She didn't look at me when the gavel struck. Lisa, caught in her own cruelty, was sent to jail for 6 months. Her absence was like a silence I didn't miss. Seattle welcomed us with a softer rhythm. The house we found was small but filled with sunlight. Ethan and Emma shared a room painted in pale yellow, the ceiling adorned with fluffy clouds I painted by hand. The room smelled faintly of baby lotion and new beginnings. Every morning, light spilled across their cribs, casting long golden stripes on the floor. Their laughter filled corners that had once known only fear. Mia, ever the anchor in my drifting life, moved close by. She became the children's beloved aunt, showering them with affection and stability. Her presence reminded me that not all family ties are blood. Some are built in choice, in loyalty, in showing up when no one else will. Jake, carrying the weight of his own mistakes, visited occasionally. He brought his daughter Ava, who chased Ethan and Emma across the yard. He had a new girlfriend now, a woman who seemed gentle and grounded. I could see Jake fumbling perhaps, but trying to give Ava a normal childhood. The first year passed like a tide. Nights were sleepless, days chaotic, but beneath the exhaustion was gratitude. On Ethan and Emma's first birthday, I took them to the park. The sun hung low, children's laughter echoed, and for the first time I allowed myself to document joy. I posted a photo of them, two tiny humans smiling with frosting smeared across their faces. The caption was simple: "Living well is the sweetest revenge." I turned off the comments. I didn't want judgments, opinions, or pity. I wanted silence. For once, silence felt like power. Then came Sophie's letter. It arrived one damp afternoon, folded neatly, the handwriting shaky but familiar. She apologized, telling me she was improving, that the doctors were helping her untangle the knots in her mind. She said she was sorry for what she had done, for the sister she had failed to be. I read the letter once, twice, then folded it back into its envelope. I wasn't ready. Forgiveness is not a gift you can rush. It requires a heart prepared to receive it. Mine was not there yet. And yet the dreams came. At night, Sophie appeared not as the woman who had attacked me, but as the little girl I had grown up with. She was the sister who had once shared Halloween candy with me. The girl who ran beside me when I learned to ride a bike, her laughter echoing down the street. I woke from those dreams with tears on my face, mourning someone who no longer existed. It was a grief no one could see, because the Sophie of today had eclipsed the Sophie I once loved. Seattle, however, taught me the quiet beauty of resilience. On evenings when Ethan and Emma toddled across the yard, the grass brushing against their small legs, I felt something shift inside me. The air was filled with their laughter, David's gentle voice, and Mia's stories. We weren't a perfect family. Scars ran deep and shadows lingered, but there was love. Love in its simplest, rawest form. And that was enough. Sometimes, when I looked at them playing under the wide sky, I thought about what it had cost me to get here. The betrayals, the violence, the breaking apart of blood ties. Yet here they were, my children, living proof that survival had meaning. Protecting them had been the hardest choice, but also the truest. I don't know if I will ever answer Sophie's letter. Maybe forgiveness will arrive someday, quiet as the sunrise. Or maybe it will never come. But when I tuck Ethan and Emma into bed at night, pressing my lips to their foreheads, I know the life I chose was the right one. Family, I learned, is not defined by perfection. It is not defined by titles or roles. It is defined by the love that remains after the storm has passed, the love that refuses to let go. And as I stand in the doorway of their room, watching their small chests rise and fall beneath a painted ceiling of clouds, I whisper to myself the only truth that matters now. This is my family. And it is enough. After living through all the chaos, heartbreak, and rebuilding, I realize there are 5 lessons I want to share with anyone listening. These lessons didn't come easily. They were carved out of pain, tears, and the determination to protect my little family. Maybe they can help you too. Lesson 1. Protecting your peace is not selfish. For so long, I tolerated Sophie's behavior, thinking it was just her personality. But peace is not something you owe others. It is something you must defend. Walking away, setting boundaries, even cutting ties when necessary, these are acts of survival, not cruelty. Lesson 2. Family is defined by love, not blood. I grew up believing blood ties meant everything. But when betrayal came, it wasn't my mother who stood by me. It was my husband, my children, and my best friend, Mia. Real family are the people who choose to love you consistently, not just those who share your DNA. Lesson 3. Forgiveness takes time, and that's okay. Sophie sent me a letter apologizing. Part of me wanted to accept it right away, but my heart wasn't ready. And I learned that's fine. Forgiveness is not a duty. It's a personal journey. You don't have to rush into it just because others expect you to. Lesson 4. Resilience grows in silence. The world online can be brutal: videos, rumors, strangers judging you. I discovered that turning off the noise, closing the comments, and focusing on my children gave me strength. True resilience often happens in the quiet moments no one else sees. Lesson 5. Love is the strongest foundation. At the end of the storm, what saved me was love. David's tears when he held Ethan and Emma. Mia's constant presence. The laughter of my children under a painted ceiling of clouds. Love grounded me, reminded me why I kept fighting, and showed me what truly mattered. So if you're listening, I want you to remember. Protect your peace, value the family you choose, allow forgiveness to come in its own time, stay resilient in silence, and let love guide you. And if this story touched you, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Every click helps these stories reach someone who might need them most.